Welcome back to Exercise Physiology on Catalyst University. My name is Kevin Tokoph. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for future videos and notifications. In this video, we're going to discuss a really cool topic, and anyone who's interested in skeletal muscle hypertrophy and myofibrillogenesis, this is going to be an important topic. And we're going to discuss the activation of this protein complex called mTORC1, or sometimes you'll hear it referred to as mTOR. Now, this protein complex is the protein complex that you want maximally activated when your goal is muscle protein synthesis. Well, why would you ever want muscle protein synthesis? Well, if you're wanting to hypertrophy your muscles, meaning making your skeletal muscles larger, in order to grow larger, you have to induce muscle protein synthesis. That's just a logical requirement. So you'd have to activate this protein complex. If you want to induce myofibrillogenesis, which is also really necessary for hypertrophy, but really myofibrillogenesis is going to be very important for really just increases in strength by itself, you also have to induce muscle protein synthesis, which means activating this protein complex. Now, normally, without really any amino acids, and there's some other factors as well, but generally amino acids, without them, mTORC1 is inactive. Now, let's first talk about the setup of how this works. We got different organelles inside the skeletal muscle cell, right? We've got, for example, the Golgi apparatus, or Golgi body, as some sources may call it. We've also got the lysosome. So in here, this is really just going to be the cytoplasm, okay? So just think of the mTORC1 complex translocating between the Golgi body and the lysosome. In fact, the lysosome is really where all the action is going to happen. Now, there are some processes or events that are going to occur while the mTORC1 is on the Golgi apparatus, but while it's on the Golgi apparatus, the mTORC1 is inactive, okay? What you're going to see really in this video is that really you just have to have a ton of amino acids to stimulate mTORC1. So really what these proteins are going to be are really just amino acid sensors. They're going to behave to sense the levels of amino acids in the skeletal muscle cell. And if there's sufficient amino acids, you're going to induce muscle protein synthesis, meaning activate mTORC1. If there's not enough amino acids, then mTORC1 doesn't need to be active, so it's going to remain bound to the Golgi apparatus, okay, where there's some other proteins over here that keep it inactive. Now, the first step really is that mTORC1 has to move from the Golgi apparatus to the lysosome membrane, has to localize over here. And really the stimulus for that is going to be amino acids, okay? So there's going to be proteins over here also on the Golgi body that are going to behave as amino acid sensors, and they're going to bind pretty much all the amino acids, but especially serine and glutamine for whatever reason. These are going to be important amino acids for that purpose. And this is actually the reason why you'll often see glutamine marketed as a supplement for exercise. In fact, sometimes if you buy certain powders of BCAAs, they'll actually throw in some glutamine in there, even though glutamine is not itself a BCAA. Okay? When you have these amino acids, but especially serine and glutamine present, they're going to stimulate the mTORC1 to translocate from the Golgi to the lysosome. Okay? And there has to be those amino acids present. In order for mTORC1 to be maximally activated, it has to be stimulated on both sides here. Now, I'm not saying that they're naturally on the left or right, it's just in the picture. But we have to have the system on the right activate mTORC1 and the system on the left. We're going to talk about the system on the left first because it's more complicated, so we're going to get that out of the way. But first, let's think about what would happen if there were no amino acids, particularly BCAAs. So we deplete the cell of those. Well, this protein called cestrin-2 is normally going to inhibit GATOR2. That's what this line that looks like this means. Cestrin-2 is going to inhibit GATOR2. And when GATOR2 is inhibited, that's ultimately going to lead to the inhibition of mTORC1. So what BCAAs do, especially leucine, although note that valine and isoleucine will also do this, but especially leucine being the most potent, it actually inhibits the inhibition of cestrin-2 on GATOR2. So you're inhibiting inhibition. That leads to, by default, stimulation. So cestrin-2, in the presence of leucine, will no longer be able to inhibit GATOR2. And so you're lifting the inhibition, so GATOR2 becomes active. And for the purpose of this video, all the important active proteins I've shown in green. Okay, so GATOR2 is active with leucine present. active GATOR2 is going to inhibit GATOR1. And GATOR1 is actually localized indirectly to the membrane by this protein called Kixter. Okay, it's kind of a weird name, but GATOR2, when activated, is going to inhibit GATOR1. So that means when GATOR1 is inhibited, it itself can no longer inhibit these RAG proteins. So if GATOR1 is inhibited, it itself can no longer inhibit these RAG proteins, and so these RAG proteins become activated. Okay, so these RAG proteins are G proteins. In fact, sometimes they're referred to as RAG GTPases. The RAG AB has to have bound GTP. The RAG CD has to have bound GDP. And it has to be like this in order to function maximally. So that itself activates these RAG GTPases, but they can actually get further activated. This protein right here that spans the membrane of the lysosome, this is actually called a vacuolar ATPase, or VATPase. And what can happen is, with the help of a transporter, just generally amino acids, really any of them, can actually be transported into the lysosome, inside the lysosome, and by some unelucidated mechanism, we don't know why this is, once the amino acids are in here, if there's sufficient amino acids, they actually can stimulate this regulator to further activate these RAG proteins. So not only will BCAAs actually out here, through this mechanism, stimulate the RAG proteins, but when amino acids, if they're sufficient, when they move into the lysosome, they actually can induce changes in conformation that lead to activation of the regulator. Now that is in fact regulator because it's a regulator of RAG proteins. That's actually the correct spelling. Okay? And so when the amino acids get transported into here through changes in conformation, they lead to activation of the regulator. So we have a twofold activation of these RAG-AB and RAG-CD proteins. Twofold. One is by activation of GATOR2 through leucine or other BCAAs. The other is through general amino acids that come inside here, inside the lysosome, and induce changes in conformation which activate regulator. So twofold activation of these RAG GTPases. When these RAG GTPases become fully activated, they actually recruit and bind mTORC1. And so the mTORC1 in this case will be sort of like half activated. Okay? So it's going to have some activity if RAG GTPases right here are active. And notice that also that the RAG proteins actually physically bind to the raptor component of mTORC1. Some of these have some weird names like Deptor or Raptor. Kind of like the raptor, it's kind of cool. All right, now on this side, this is the simpler part. This side is not really dependent on BCAAs like it is over here for leucine. This side is actually dependent on arginine, another amino acid, but this one is a nitrogen-containing basic amino acid. These proteins right here, TSC1 and TSC2, will normally inhibit this protein called Reb. When Reb is inhibited, mTORC1 is not maximally activated. So Reb actually has to be active to stimulate and bind mTORC1. So what happens is arginine will actually inhibit TSC1 and TSC2. So doing that, arginine lifts the inhibition on Reb. Okay? So TSC1 and TSC2 can no longer inhibit Reb1 in the presence of arginine. So in other words, what arginine does is indirectly, it stimulates the function of Reb, which is also another G protein that has bound GTP. And so that leads to partial activation of mTORC1, and we see that Reb is actually going to bind mTORC1 and activate it. And so there's three things that actually have to happen if we want mTORC1 activation. Generally three things. One, first of all, the mTORC1 has to translocate to the lysosome. It's not active on the Golgi. That's where it's inactive. You actually have to put it on the lysosome, localize it there in order to become activated. But the other two things that have to happen is you have to have active RAG GTPases, which depend on activated GATOR2 and the presence of general amino acids here and BCAAs. And the third thing is you have to have activated Reb, a GTPase, which becomes activated when you have arginine present. Okay? Those are the three things that have to happen. And when those three things happen in tandem, you have maximally activated mTORC1. Okay? Now, what does mTORC1 do? Well, mTORC1, due to amino acids and also glucose and growth factors can also stimulate this, but what it does is two things, really. That in terms of protein synthesis. One, it directly stimulates protein synthesis. The way it does that is by phosphorylation of these two proteins. One of these, this is 4E binding protein, or 4EBP. This protein is actually, when phosphorylated, is actually going to stimulate the initiation of translation, which is just the first step in protein synthesis. So it actually is going to act more or less on the ribosome, one component of it. And then this protein, P70S6K, this is a kinase. And when this kinase becomes activated, it's going to further stimulate translation initiation, but also the elongation process of the protein synthesis. So that's one thing that mTORC1 does, is it directly stimulates muscle protein synthesis. Now, the other thing that mTORC1 does is it actually inhibits autophagy and also inhibits protein degradation. So what autophagy is it's really just the degradation of cellular components. Normally, it's going to target oxidized components or damaged ones. But in general, autophagy is just going to be the removal of protein components and cellular components, and it also involves degradation of proteins. If you want muscle protein synthesis, you have to shut these processes off. So the way that mTORC1 is going to deal with increasing muscle protein synthesis is twofold. One, it's going to stimulate protein synthesis directly, but it's also going to inhibit protein degradation. And by doing those two things, both of them, you get a lot of a synthesis of muscle proteins, and that's going to be things like titin, dystrophin, actin, myosin, troponin, tropomyosin, etc. Enzymes associated with the muscle itself, like creatine kinase if you're a type 2X or 2B muscle fiber, etc. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. The other thing that you should be aware of is there are other things that also stimulate mTORC1 which are not shown here. Glucose also stimulates mTOR1. And the reason it does this is because you can actually get some activation of mTORC1 when insulin binds to the insulin receptor. Remember, if you actually eat glucose after resistance training, you fill the blood with glucose, and so insulin gets released by the pancreas. And the purpose of the insulin is to bind to the insulin receptor on muscle cell membranes and facilitate glucose entry into those cells. Well, insulin signaling also is going to stimulate mTORC1. Okay? Growth factors like insulin will also do something similar. All right, so hopefully this gives you a good understanding of mTORC1. And I want to mention one more thing in closing, and this goes back to one thing we talked about in the previous video, which was beta-hydroxy beta-methylbutyrate, also known as HMB. This is an ergogenic supplement that you can actually find in drugstores. Its purpose is really to induce muscle protein synthesis. And we talked about this briefly in the previous video. But notice that in the same way that leucine and other BCAAs inhibit cestrin-2, leading to activation of Gator-2 and mTORC1, notice that HMB, or this beta-hydroxy beta-methylbutyrate, actually has the same function. It does the same thing at this step that leucine and valine and isoleucine do. So this also explains the mechanism more clearly of why HMB does what it does in the function of muscle protein synthesis. All right, so hopefully this gave you a good understanding of mTORC1 and muscle protein synthesis. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for future videos and notifications. Thank you very much.